All right, it's another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time covering 21.5. Another chapter from the arc Imago, which, as previously discussed, is like the newly adult form of many insects. So, yes, Imago. And, I'm gonna let people trickle in for a minute while we sort of let the music do its thing. Alright, perhaps because of the odd timing of the stream, no one is available. So I am just gonna go on as though this is just gonna be a solo run. So alright, for the audience participation reminder, the audience participation was, who's your favorite fictional lesbian couple? So yeah, we'll discuss people's answers later. For themes, I thought that there's kind of a big theme of, it feels like everything that Taylor's doing in these chapters is like the last time she's going to do whatever. So, like she thinks to herself about how, at the end of the chapter, about how Perian has moved up her timetable for something that she knew is inevitable. But it's pretty clear from the beginning of this arc that she feels as though everything she's doing is like on a short time frame before something that she keeps not thinking about, which will happen at the end of the arc. So, we feel that inevitability. So I guess that's the theme, is the like weird inevitability. But she has like pre-nostalgia for the time she's in now. She is realistic about how little time she has left doing what she's doing now. Yeah, and then another theme is sort of like Taylor is doing everything she can to temper her responses to everything. I think that she takes time to stop herself from being worked up before she actually talks to Flechette and Miss Militia, and she can't think of anything to say, but still, like, with Gru earlier on, but still has, like, a good moment. So, she's very, I don't know, she's being very thoughtful and not just reacting to everything like she normally does, so, pretty interesting. Gonna kind of just jump into the chapter itself, though. It cuts in after the off-screen sex scene between Taylor and Brian. She sort of gets her sundress up. It was used to sort of clean off the spot they used, so it's got a little bit of debris on it. And then she sort of bugs up herself, like she just moves her swarm onto herself under the dress, as discussed when she was loaded down with bugs before. But this time Brian's looking at her while she does this, and he sort of he shakes his head to be like, no big deal. Oh, that Taylor. He thinks to himself. But then, so yeah, she puts on her dress, etc. And then sort of stares at Brian longingly, wanting to stay with him, etc. Feeling loss on many levels, and she talks about some of the stuff about him. But then sort of dismisses that and makes herself move on. Not wanting to leave a bad impression, but not thinking of anything to say, she gives him a kiss on the cheek before she leaves. And, she's still undercover as... so this is kind of a big moment for us, really. As it, whether the reader picks up on it or not. There are signs pointing to it being the last major romantic interaction between Taylor and Brian, and they don't even say anything to each other. They just have some body language and some like longing, and then they leave. It's really it's the end of an era. Taylor's been after him since like Arc 2. So let's see here. She gets out of there. She doesn't actually get any catcalls like she did last time. There's a lot of rain, so there's way less people on the street, and people aren't looking as closely at her either, which is good for her to get out of there. She feels good moving and walking and stuff. Typical Taylor running around, running her feelings out. Let's see here. She gets a ride on a bus, and there's some interaction with a group of dudes who she doesn't really know if they recognize her as Skitter or are being defensive of her as just like a girl, but I think it's pretty clear that they recognize her as Skitter and are vaguely Undersiders aligned and give her just like some physical cover, sitting around her and not looking at her. So, either way, some helpful dudes sort of block her approach. She thinks to herself about how she should get her own ride, and she thinks some jokey thoughts about how she could use a Volkswagen Beetle instead of a normal car, and it's pretty funny. Then she gets off the bus and she thinks to herself more or less how she's close enough that even if she was caught now, it would be fine because she could make it back to her territory. She's been trying to maintain the bugs in the area. She makes an exception for killing mosquitoes because they're so harmful to humans, but everything else she tries to keep in order and not just destroy the local ecology with her use and destruction of the bugs. There's some areas that she looks at, like the she sees her gang tag around, which I think we've used art of her gang tag in the past, but it's like an upside down scarab beetle kind of. And let me think. It says, my emblem, a beetle with wings spread, marks walls and signposts, predominantly on buildings that had yet to receive attention. So it sort of marks her area, but she's trying to do it strategically so it's not really destructive, and she gets annoyed when she sees it's on like regular buildings that weren't supposed to be. So then she sees the scar where Dauntless and the two like weird white supremacists are. There's Alabaster and Jotun or whatever. But she weirdly thinks of them as the three heroes. Maybe because they all died fighting Leviathan, but it's a bit of an oversight for Taylor. Two of them not the greatest guys. Dauntless, pretty cool actually. He doesn't really have a secret dark side or dark past. He was just an actual hero. Uh, but they're stuck, and it's like a weird thing because there's like rain going into it, and like some like people had thrown stuff into it, but also flower petals have been put onto it, so it's a weird thing. But they've put up a big enclosure around it so that people can't get half their hand stuck in it or whatever, you know. So when she's most of the way back to her place, she senses that Parian, Miss Militia, and Flechette are all in her territory, sort of just waiting for her to come back. And, you know, her followers have, of course, also noticed this because, you know, it's just obvious. They're just hanging around. So she takes a moment to calm herself down specifically. The heroes don't just point their weapons at her, so she feels good about this. And then she's confrontational, but in a like slow burn way when she starts with, "You're in my territory." She doesn't she's not like jumping down their throats or attacking with bugs or whatever. And then they say that they were invited by Parian, and they want to parlay, you know how these heroes and villains do their business. They constantly having secret meetings, but also very public meetings like this. I mean, later Taylor will think like, maybe I could tell people to not tell people about this. But like there's a lot of witnesses. It's kind of out in the open. They're just kind of hoping no one actually heard what they said. You can only take so much caution when there's superpowers involved, because you could have like the I can hear everything within 30 miles cape with, and he's only 25 miles away, so he heard everything now. So there's only so much you can do anyway. So when she goes and talks to them, she walks out normal at first, and then she takes all the bugs out from under her costume and puts them on her like arms and legs and face, and it's just like typical Taylor, just being a creep. She's using intimidation to armor herself. She says some more confrontational stuff, like she might evict them. And then Miss Militia's like, we're here to just talk. Taylor demands a ceremonial show of respect and wants them to hand over their weapons. Miss Militia basically says this is pointless, and then Taylor's like, I know, just do it anyway, for the onlookers. And so then we get the scene that we see here in the art, this handing over of the Bowie knife. I think that it was supposed to be that she's holding the blade and hands the handle, but we'll just pretend that she hands it over like this, because, it's a green glowy Bowie knife. What more can we ask for? This is just before she flips it over in her hand. How about that? It's right at the point when it says, she looked down at the gun. It flickered and became a Bowie knife. This is the image, and then she tossed it into the air, caught it by the flat of the blade, and approached me. And somehow, this is between her approaching and her flipping it. We have bent time just as Butcher will bend space in the next chapter. But I guess it is confusing because I took the blade, which could mean the knife or grabbed by the blade. Whatever, but I could swear it reacted, vibrating. It's alive. Yes, Miss Militia said. It's a part of me. A part of her, as in a part of her mind? Or is it her passenger? I felt like there was something more I should say in response to that, but I decided to focus on the matter at hand. People were watching from the sidelines. Man, we always wish that the characters would talk more about this stuff, but they're always like, there's no time! There's even conversations between characters at some points in Parahumans where they're like, people are always saying there's no time to talk about this. I need you to tell me right now. Anyway. Then Taylor demands the arbalest of, we see the moody teen over there on the left side of the image, Flechette, who's leaning against a wall, looking very cool, and she tells Perian that she owes her when she, hands over the weapon. And then this, sparks a dialogue, and Perian says all this stuff, not Perian, Flechette says all this stuff about how she's been all angry and she's like a different person after all her trauma from Brockton Bay, and she can't even trust her teammates because of all the cauldron drops, and everything's messed up in her life, and not only does she have no future, but also there is no future because the end of the world. So, she's in emotional turmoil, some would say. This is all in the back and forth. Miss Militia also brings up how I'm not doing everything in strict order. I'm kind of spitballing here a little bit, but Miss Militia also talks about the portal and how they could use it as an emergency escape because they've found that the other side is mostly safe, more or less. And, Taylor is like, we knew something like that would happen, and so you're coming to meet with me because you need to talk to the true rulers of the underworld, the Undersiders. Miss Militia brings up Dragon and Defiance showing up in the city, and how they had more or less, like Tattletale, predicted all the stuff that was going to go down with the portal existing now. And how they had gotten all their plans thrown out of whack with being forced to out Taylor. And then apparently Miss Militia had caught Flechette trying to investigate the armband, which had not been successful, but then they directly spoke to Defiant, and Defiant just told them, he mea culpa, he's like, I admit it, I did EMP the brace, the armband, and I did lead things in a specific direction to try and get Leviathan to kill off these various villains and then get a one-on-one fight with him. So he completely came clean to those two. And this is a lot of evidence of the claims that Skitter had been making to Flechette back in Arc 15. So we're getting some classic worm payoff here, long-term storylines. And I think all the dialogue is really good in this chapter too. So, I'm kind of breezing past a lot of it, not reading that much of it, but I think all four of the characters, it's really clear, like what their emotional state is by how they're acting and how like Flechette and Taylor, they're like both acting out. Um, Parian is very quiet and trying to make herself scarce because she feels guilty in like three directions. And then Miss Militia is, I would say she's she's in like a constant state of minor surprise at how interacting with Taylor is now that she understands Taylor, and how different it is now that she can have a dialogue with her while knowing like who she is outside of her villain persona. And it gets brought up. They extend an apology, and Miss Militia brings up the allegations of bullying, and Taylor gets mad, says like, speak plainly, you know who Shadowstalker was beneath the mask, and then talks about how she talks about how they were complicit in covering up the bullying and making it so that Sophia wouldn't get in very much trouble for all the stuff that was going on, even though it was clear that she was the perpetrator along with Emma and Madison. And then they say that they. Oh wait, I was misinterpreting for a second. Oh, hey, it's Alien Cat Daddy. You're the first person to show up. I've been monologuing to an empty audience, which, is always possible when it's these alternate times for the stream. So, but I gotta do it when it's feasible for me. So, thanks for being here. It's great to have a not quite empty audience. Oh, Vale is here. Two. Now I have an audience of two. That's like, infinity times the number of audience members I had a few minutes ago. So, pretty good. Let's see here. So yeah. Yes, Vale. That's what was happening. Me saying infinity times as many is not a joke about 2 being infinity times more than 0. It was me being unkind about someone's weight. Anyway. So back to where I was. Yes, they're saying how now they know about like what had happened between Shadowstalker and her civilian identity bullying Taylor, etc. And the way that Miss Militia phrases this, she says, I recognize that it might have even pushed you to take a different direction with your newfound powers. And then Taylor says to Miss Militia something that is a revelation to the heroes, but that we've known all along. She says, I got my powers because of her. And then she sort of just elucidates that she was in the hospital and that they can look up when it happened in early January. And Miss Militia apologizes for this, but this kind of makes Taylor mad. She even starts, talking about how she was a bystander who was impacted by this. The bully that, I mean, she's not using bystander in the typical bully victim bystander dichotomy, because in this case she's using the word to describe herself who became a victim, but it's still like, once she starts using that language, once she starts saying bystander, we know she's up in her I'm Taylor and bullying is my core emotional problem. She was in that mode. Um, so Flechette starts to sense the hostility that's happening and she starts moving her hands like she's gonna just pull something out to throw at Taylor. She's got a lot of tricks up her sleeve, and then the situation calms down because Miss Militia's despite being gun personified, Miss Militia is actually very good at diplomacy, and so she's able to just keep things from heating up over and over again throughout the conversation, despite kind of also putting her foot in it a couple times. I don't know. She's pretty good at talking to these people. People like Taylor. Let's see here. Taylor sort of admits to some of her faults, saying that it was only really like she made the decisions the whole time, but things were slightly facilitated by the heroes being not that helpful. And Miss Militia's like, well, we're here to change that, and they discuss their different ideas on Miss Militia staying in the Protectorate versus Taylor thinking that the Protectorate's a bust and that they should not keep trying to save it. Oh, Vale says, Clockblocker and Miss Militia seem like the two coolest of the heroic sorts. You like the coolest heads? Yeah. I mean, Clockblocker is like medium. He kind of is like, he comes in hot sometimes, and then he sort of, he keeps simmering things down too. I think Weld has a pretty cool head when he's dealing with villains. He like when they have that meeting on the building in Arc 11, I think he's got a really cool head in that villain interaction. I don't know. Alien saying, great chapter. This Miss Militia convo is so illuminating. Yeah, you learn a lot, and the characters also learn a lot. They're like exchanging a lot of information, and a lot of it is sort of like not necessarily new information for us, but it's the characters' reactions to each other is new information for us. So we're getting a lot out of it. And we're getting some potential dramatic ironies settled, like the investigation into the armband. So that's like a great like payoff for that, like the back and forth, the object in the world, like all that stuff being set up previously. And theoretically, that's a storyline that's been playing out since Arc 8 also. So, Vale's saying, thinking about point and in parens S points of view, can you imagine how short and awful Worm would have been if it was Sophia as the protag? Yeah, kind of, because I mean, if you started at like more or less the same place, and you had some events to propel you forward to the point where she kind of goes to jail. Well, but then again, you can follow her journey in jail. That could be a potential. Because while she doesn't have a lot of character growth per se, she goes through a lot, and I do think that she kind of gets like more unreasonable and hostile over time almost in the opening of the story. Okay, what are people saying? Alien saying, yeah, she seems to also think Miss Militia is, I guess, more open to working with her. Yeah, yeah. Vale says 6 chapters, then epilogue. Worm finished, on to Pact. I don't see how you'd make a Sophia story that short. She's got a lot. There's a lot to mine. I actually think Sophia would be a great anti-hero protagonist where she's like, because, she's kind of a real piece of shit, right? But so, I mean, I don't think that disqualifies her from being like a really compelling character to follow and be in the perspective of. Um, uh, I actually wish we got more from her chapter in arc 9. Uh, I know you're just memeing because like we all hate Sophia or whatever, but like as a character, I think Sophia's great, and I would totally follow a whole story about her. Um, Man, wouldn't that be something? Like if there was a third, like I know that Wildbow doesn't like parahumans anymore and got bad reception to Ward and all this blah 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 blah. But if there was another parahumans and it was about Sophia post Ward, oh my god, I would read the shit out of that. Um, Whack. I would. The only thing I can come up with off the top of my head is waif because she's got like I know that she's not a waif in terms of her like stature because she's like very strong and muscular, but when she goes into her intangible state, she's very different. I don't know. That's a bad title. It wouldn't be waif. It would be I've always thought that another parahumans would be called well in regard to the when people sort of have these visions of their powers in Ward, they see the well of power. They say a lot. So I think if it was called Well, that would be good. Warn, that's a good one. Vale, I have no idea what would Sophia do? Maybe that's yeah. What would Sophia do? WWSD. But that shall not be the name. It shall be Warn or Well. Wash. Warp. Um, I do think it would be a funny title for one to be called Welp. Um, but Alien, I gotta assume when you say maybe why that you're doing a Waluigi slash Wario noise. Yes, the third iteration of parahumans shall be wah. Um, wow, I so derailed. Let me see, where am I at? They've changed the dynamic. That's where I'm at. Uh, they sort of negotiate their feelings between each other about whether they think the protectorate is worth saving as it is, and I think Miss Militia actually makes a big impression on Taylor, and she busts out some like Dyna numbers about how well they'll do in fights against the Behemoth or Seamerg. And it's not great. And like the Protectorate being there definitely improves their chances. So, I kind of think this makes a pretty big impact on how Taylor feels and how she moves forward. Like she'll talk about this being a pivotal conversation, but I mean this specific part where Miss Militia's saying her own reasoning why she thinks the Protectorate's important. Um, and then Miss Militia at one point says something like that, which like RM Brown dropped something like that. Um, And then she talks about how the Protectorate and the Wards, but not the PRT, were wanting to sort of detente with the Undersiders and not fight them anymore. And then Taylor lays out some terms and conditions, like she wants it to be like the ABB situation, but with even more direct contact. They're not just like knocking at a stronghold, then calling the cops afterward. Like they would want to directly have simultaneous raids on different places, stuff like that. That's not said explicitly, but I'm pretty sure that's what Taylor means, is that, like, let's say the Teeth had two components. They would want to, in a future where they're more aligned with the heroes, they would strike one location and the heroes would strike another, and they would take them down or whatever. For example, and part of this whole thing, Taylor wants to have it like this so that Parian, who is still not publicly part of the Undersiders, to like non-capes, but is clearly one of the Undersiders to the capes they're meeting with. They want it to be like, they want to have their cake and eat it too. Have it so that she can call in the heroes or call in the Undersiders. So she's a pretty good link that they have between the two sides. And again, she's the one who called this meeting. She's the one who got them on such sort of non-confrontational from the start. Like, no one even threw a single punch or took a pot shot at each other. They just started talking. Anyway. Superian really helped all of us. But then, Flechette, at this point in the conversation, this is where she gets mad about how Taylor recruited, I don't know if the term was intentional, but the term recruited is like a loaded term when it comes to like gay and lesbian stuff. But she says that Taylor recruited Parian for the dark side, more or less. I mean, the word recruited is italicized. And then she says how Parian's costume is a slap in the face to her, which Parian is like pretty put off by. Like, she's like, that was my decision. I think Parian already finds Flechette to be very controlling and a little overbearing. And this hurts Flechette's feelings. Miss Militia stops Flechette from having any more shouting at Taylor. But when she calms down, she says a little more. This is, I had alluded to it earlier, thinking it happened earlier in the chapter, but this is where she talks about, how her future's uncertain and everything's a mess. And, Taylor common grounds this situation. She's like saying, I don't think that stuff you said makes you sound weak. I think it's just a very open admission, and I find that I am in the same situation as you. I don't know what the future holds, and that's scary. And so this is, Miss Militia is this is where she says, interesting to have a conversation with you with a greater understanding of the girl behind the mask. What do you want, Taylor? And then Taylor declares that she's Skidder for now. She has no Taylor anymore, which is kind of crazy because it's more like she lost the ability to be Taylor without consequences, but she was always Taylor all the time. And now it's almost reversed. It's not that she's lost Taylor, it's that people always know she's Taylor. So she has this like weird loss of identity crisis. But in truth, it's more like she's being seen for the first time. I don't know. It's a very strange state of affairs where, like, I understand where the character is coming from in their feelings, but it's clear that it comes from this in-world cultural delusion they have about how, like, the consequences of their actions like don't lead back to their civilian identities. Like it's kind of like an Undertale when you look in the mirror at the end of the game. Like no matter what good or bad actions it says, it's like after all that's happened, you're still you, and like that's very heartwarming if you've got the great ending. But if you've been evil the whole time, then it's like wow, it's like it looked into me and it hurt me. Um, let's see here. Vale said, oh no, Alien says, do we know how much influencer Tattletale had on Perian joining the group? Well, I mean, we could. I would say very little. It could be said that there's some off-screen scene where there's more that happened, but from the events presented in the book, I would say that it's almost all Taylor slash Skitter getting Perian into the group, because on her own, she, like, Tattletale approves of her idea to go talk to Perian, but on her own, Taylor makes the offer of the money. Taylor makes the offer to stay when Perian won't take the money. Taylor approaches Coyle to get like the truce at that point. And then it's unclear exactly because there is the 3 week time gap between Echidna and Arc 20. But in Arc 9 or 18, when Perian's talking to them and refusing to help with Echidna, like Tattletale's not helpful in that situation, and I would say Taylor is still the one who's kind of more compelling to her, but it's not good enough to get her in the fight against Echidna. Even though she would have ruled against Echidna, she would have been using the unconsumable, like, telekinetically controlled stuffed animals and like wailing on her, keeping her in place. Probably would have saved some lives, but Perian was not ready to face the fight. Anyway, great question. Alien says, "Lol, yeah, she could have been a hard counter." Um, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Um, let's see here. Let's see. They were compromising. Yes. So, Taylor brings up the fact that Tag had said this was a war. She sees this affect Miss Militia and then says, you can't reason with people like that. And then Miss Militia brings up the fact that she has also heard Tag say that, and that's part of why she's here. They sort of are in agreement about the fact that they can't go on as they have. Miss Militia is worried about the fact that civilians are supposed to lead the capes and they can't go around. They can't circumvent that just for their own whims. And then Taylor's like, without saying it, she's like, Alexandria is Rebecca Costa Brown. What are we doing here? So, she doesn't say it because Flechette wasn't at the Echidna event, so she might not actually know about Alexandria being the head of the PRT. But it's obvious. Yeah, so this is where they talk about applying like passive resistance. She mentions the like treat it like the ABB at this point, and she's basically like, if you're sent to go get us, just let us get away. Just lie and say that Gru used his darkness or whatever. Because it'll make sure that we're all ready to fight when the Endbringers come. Because, Taylor's pretty serious about this whole Endbringer fighting thing. And she made that known in the last few S-Class threat events, like Behemoth, Slaughterhouse 9, Echidna. She was there for the fight for each one. And she's kind of made it part of her brand. to even like be like, you heroes aren't willing to fight hard enough. So, while that may have been very confrontational when she said it, it's gotten her a lot of cred in the future. Let's see here. Then, Miss Militia's basically like, if you pull stunts like putting out Valafor's eyes, like that forces our hand to come after you. And then she's like, I'll back off. I'm not gonna do anything. And it's only gonna be a few more days, and then something will happen. I can't tell you what that something is, Miss Militia, or the audience reading the book, but something will happen. And Miss Militia's kind of like, and then they all kind of say, this is fine. We can agree to this for the next few days, and then we can sort of figure out. Miss Militia's still like really worried about what Taylor's been doing the last few days between the attack on the PRT headquarters, fighting Valafor. Like, she can't keep this up, etc. And then Taylor says, like, you have to trust me. You've never trusted me, and you just have to. And she's kind of like, okay, I will trust you this time. And Taylor's like, we can't shake hands because there would probably be a cell phone video of us doing that. But the deal is done. And then the weapons are retaken. The arbalest and the green energy weapon for Miss Militia. And then they all thank each other. They all say, I'm sorry. And then they all leave. And she says to Perian, oh, no, it was fine that you did this. I'm not mad. But then in her head, she's like, I fucking hate you, Perian. You're the worst. You're the worst one in the whole team. She's like, I'd rather hang out with Alec than you. She's thinking all sorts of mean thoughts. She doesn't say any of those things that I just said. She just says, for that, I hated her. Just a little. The feeling was clear enough, small as it might be. See, that's all she says. None of that mean stuff. But, you gotta think to yourself, over the next few minutes, she's gonna be thinking all sorts of terrible things. Or maybe she'll just immediately compartmentalize it. Anyway, that's the end of the chapter. Alien says, doesn't the knife just disappear when it's handed to her? That is correct. Let me see what it says. Boop, 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 boop. I held her knife out toward her, and it dissolved into a mess of green-black energy. It zipped to Miss Militia's hand, became a pistol. She holstered it. Yeah, she's cool about it. And the arbalest was just set on the ground, so just Flechette walks over and picks it up. In the movies, they're always like, drop it, and then they drop the gun. But I just imagine Flechette being like, I need to set this down very carefully. It's incredibly delicate. Anyway. Alien says, honestly, I always thought that part was so funny. Taylor is so obsessed with how people view her. Yeah, but I kind of feel like the story agrees with Taylor. Like that is presented in both Worm and Ward to actually be sort of important because they're doing power dynamics through like speech and body language and stuff rather than through direct violence. So it's giving them an outlet to still like kind of fight and negotiate just in showiness when they're kind of talking to allies. So yeah, it is funny how obsessed she is with it. But you'll find that she's not the only character. Like Brian, Victoria, like all sorts of people are just like obsessed with Image and with how like the cape etiquette of a situation should be going. Um, so yes, there's a lot of comedy scenes throughout both books based around how these people are all neurotic weirdos about like made up rules. Uh, Ella says, "Yeah, you're right. She uses that when she fights in the school. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it gives them a lot of avenues, and like something we'll see is the powers themselves are like trying to like grow and find new ways to be used, or whatever, and they'll even pick up concepts like, and not that they don't already have them from like powers we've seen, but they'll pick up concepts like social dynamics as like a vector of attack, um which is pretty interesting, I think. Maybe I'll have smarter things to say about that at some point. I feel like me and Victoria had wanted to write little essays. Me and Vic, rather, to keep Vic separate from the character Victoria, of course. I feel like we'd wanted to write little character essays and stuff, about like little topics, and I still do want to do that when I am not just scrambling to get the stream together at all. So when it's more stable someday, that's my eventual goal. But we'll see if that ever even happens. Um, so final chapter thoughts on this one. Another really good one. It's weird because this arc is like an arc where I think it's really good. I think the dialogue is really solid and everything. But I like never go back to just listen to this one in the same way that like I'll just listen to arc 22 or arc 16, arc 17. There's like specific ones that I just can listen to completely independent of the story, but I'll only usually listen to arc 21 when I'm listening through the full book. Um, I don't know exactly. It's maybe it's because it's like this transitional state. It's like clear that Taylor has this thing in mind that she's gonna do at the end of the arc, and the fact that she's always just mentally avoiding thinking what that is a bit weird. 21 is melancholy, is what Vale says. Maybe that's the reason. That's a good point. You make a very solid case. Maybe I just don't want to sit in that. It's like arc 10, even though there's like some cool stuff that happens in arc 10, arc 10 is still just like a bummer. And a lot of people I know have ended their run in like arc 10, 11, 12. And I think it's because all three of those are a flippin' bummer. Actually, I don't know anyone who stopped who made it all the way to 12. So 10 and 11 is where they're mostly stopping. But Vale says 22 is super optimistic and happy start to finish, though, so I can see how that is a must re listen. Yeah, yeah, it's just super, super compelling. And like, it feels like its own. This feels like it wouldn't be a novel on its own. This is part of a web serial, but Arc 22 feels like if this were more traditional sized novels, 22 would be one of those novels. It wouldn't really need to be changed that much. Are we remembering 22 the same? It's so stressful. I think we are remembering it the same, but we just react really differently to what's happening. Um, I mean, I find not like optimist. It's like optimistic if you already know what happens, I would say, whereas like 21 doesn't feel optimistic even if you. I don't know how to categorize this because like obviously I know logically that 21 leads to 22, so I have these different feelings. And you might have been joking, but it's not like happy, but it's like she goes in like head held high, and like she's got these plans, and even when things fall through, I don't know, she just keeps it going. And I don't know. I think that my feelings toward Arc 22 are just bonkers because of how many times I've listened to it. So yes, we maybe just have like really fail because of the medium spoilers. I'll just leave that for the people who want to read the comment. Vale says, I'll say the first part. 21 is saying farewell, and then has a cheeky comment about 22. By far the funniest part of the story is Regent at the end of Arc 22. Yeah, so it's not happy all the way through, but like the end of it is very like triumphant feeling. I don't know. This one kind of goes out with a whimper, and 22 goes out with a bang. Um, uh, as far as this thing, getting back to the chapter we're actually reviewing, the gravitational pull of 22 is just so high. Um, good chapter. I like that there's no fights or anything, and that it's just like a conversation chapter. It gives us a nice downbeat. It's sort of, I guess that's kind of the arc pace. There's like a fight, and then a all talk no fight chapter, and then a fight. Well, no, that's not true either, because there's been 2 all talk no fight chapters in a row, 4 and 5. Well, whatever. It's just vignettes over time, maybe. I was just trying to think if there's like a specific pacing, but there's really chapter to chapter there isn't one. I mean, I think it's good and it's well paced, but there isn't like a gimmick to it, where a lot of Wildbow arcs actually have gimmicks to them. But I can't think of one. Onto the characters section, we get a very brief glimpse of Brian. The end of the Brian Taylor relationship. It's very sweet. She kisses him on the cheek and leaves. He sees her do something really gross and just shakes his head and smiles. Very, very sweet. Um, um, hmm. Alien says it's a lot of setup. I'm assuming that's just generally about Arc 21, and I agree. It is a whole lot of setup. And then what else? So character wise, yes, Brian. I don't think I have that much to say about him here. Just that it's kind of sad as an audience member to see their kind of ship end. It's just one of those things, though, you know. And then bye bye, Brian. We'll see you interacting more as a friend and a fellow Cape than as a love interest. Moving on to Miss Militia. She feels like she's got a lot of skin in the game for these negotiations, because the way that Tag is talking is, very antithetical to what she thinks they should be doing. The idea that this is a war, like, obviously we know as the audience that her background is being like a. She's not exactly a child soldier, but she kind of is. She had to like kill all those Turkish soldiers to survive when she first got her powers. And like she's just got like very, I don't think it's like in a negative way, because I think she has to like live with what happened, and she has like almost perfect recall if she dreams. So like, she's metaphorically like locked in that moment in a certain way. But like she is very cold in some ways for how warm she is in her life. She's very cold when she thinks about the situation that happened when she got her powers. Um, and so she's very invested in not being in a war situation where she has to like murder the shit out of people and then kind of like be all cold inside to move past it. She doesn't want to. That's not her bag. She doesn't want to do that again slash anymore. Um, but yeah, so she's very open in this negotiation, and like we've seen interdepart or like within a department, like within the protectorate group and within the like protectorate wards sort of overall structure. It's very clear that she's very good at navigating situations between capes and between people in general. So she's like good at negotiating with extreme personalities and at trying to look at a situation from a like a point of view very distant from her own. So um it makes sense that she would be the perfect character for Wildbow to send here to negotiate with Taylor to um like I said earlier, form like a truce or a detente, just a non-aggression uh pact of some kind with the heroes and the Undersiders. Um, Alien says, does her power give her any secondary ability that would help like that? Um, I don't think that Miss Militia's power gives her something like that. I think it's like the circumstances of her um upbringing after her power where she was in these like really extreme circumstances but then had enough like a good enough life to sort of figure herself out and stuff, and to like she never forgets because of her trauma, which is manifest literally within the story through her power of like remembering things when she dreams, like through this she is able to keep herself grounded. Like she even says she doesn't need to sleep, but the reason she sleeps is when she's feeling like not grounded. So she like kind of is able to keep the importance of what they're doing and how like bad things can get in her mind. And it's just like important to her as a person to like she's like Chevalier or Weld or whatever, where she's like or like Dragon, where they're like a hero through and through, and like it actually is important to them personally to be like saving as many people as possible and like trying to help people in a really holistic way. So that's why I think that she's a good negotiator and she's able to like come to this kind of understanding. Um uh Alien says, I know sometimes it affects the way they think. Yeah, I think so. I think it almost always does to some extent, but I don't know that her power intersects really closely here. I guess there's like irony to the fact that her power is like within human culture, like violence manifest. Like she has weapons. Like it can be any martial weapon too. It's not just guns. It's just she has access to any weapon all the time. Um, and so, in a way, she's got to have a lot of discipline compared to some capes who have to like kind of focus their power or like do a thing or their power's not that offensive. Like think people who can kind of like make force fields that bump into you. If they made a force field and bumped into you, it could get dangerous if they did like a whole maneuver, but like they're not constantly at risk of firing off the blam blams, So I don't know. There's some self mastery there, I guess. The fact that she's not evil when she's got a power that's just like shoot people, that's pretty good. Um, so I guess it only affects her to the extent that Imp's power affects the way she thinks because of the way it affects her circumstances. Alien says firing off the blam blam needs to be on a shirt. Perhaps. Anyway. So I think her character is really well shown in this chapter, just through her dialogue and her like little body language that's described by Taylor. Miss Militia's great. We love her. Flechette, it's pretty obvious. She's angry. She feels incredibly attached to Parian, etc., and feels like her old attachments were like the center of her life in the past, but that she can't relate to those same people anymore, so her life is ruined. Obviously she feels like she has no future. She thinks that Taylor gets into your head already, like we saw her stating that in a previous chapter to Jessica Yamada. But at the same time, Taylor has been vindicated, not only through some like sham of a tinker thing, but through Defiant just completely saying he did those things that Taylor said that he did. So her world is obviously rocked. She doesn't know what to do with herself. She's all upset. Even though she wears a black costume all the time and has reflective sunglasses and basically is as much of a creep as Gideon from from Gideon the Ninth, she's still like, I can't believe that Parian put on a dark clad costume. I can't believe she's done this. It's like, look in the mirror, Flechette. Anyway, I find Lily to be very funny. I love her. Great teen lesbian angst representation. Very relatable. Let's see here. Next on our list, we'll talk about Parian. Parian is sad, much as always, because her life is very sad, and also she's caught up in all these awful situations. She's just like, I didn't know what to do, so I wanted to just get everyone in the room together to talk. And, it worked. She nailed it. And Taylor hates her now. But it's good that she stands up for herself to Flechette, because, Flechette was projecting, a toxic dynamic into their, not even yet started relationship of, this sort of controlling aspect. And we'll see, as the medium spoilers go, we'll see from Parian's perspective later. I really like the way she's written and the way her past is with, feeling obligated to, do stuff, or, she'll be punished for not going along with other people's whims. And even though she has this past like that, she is able to sort of break the cycle with Lily and stand up to her and be like, you don't own me. Also, it's really funny because Parian always feels younger than, Saba feels younger than Lily, but it's just, not true. Saba's, 21, and Lily's, 17. It's, a problematic age gap in the other direction, but it's still, somehow Flechette just feels so, adult-coded, and Parian feels so, teen-coded. And so, yeah, I'm not sure of their actual specific ages, but I'm pretty sure it's like that. It's 21 and 17 or something. So, they're gonna have to wait unless they want to break the law. Oh my god. So, the final character in this chapter is, well, okay, actually, I should take a moment. I should check myself before I wreck myself. I've been only counting the 5 parahumans. There are a bunch of bystanders and those 4 people who are probably undersider aligned. I think it's a good little bit of, like, world building to have these minor characters. They don't get that much characterization, but we can sort of imagine them, like the people in our territory, like, sort of given the evil eye to Flechette and Miss Militia while like getting ready to clear out, stuff like that, or like the 4 dudes on the bus. Very easy to imagine these people. Vale says villains. I'm not sure what that was in response to, but yes, villains. Yeah. But on to the final character, Taylor. Obviously she's all like, damn, I don't have any more time with my team anymore. I have to leave my friends. Something. So, she's doing a lot of wistful sighing and thinking, wow, there's so little time. Sigh. Oh, Vale says breaking the law is what caused the villains to be said. Well, I accept. They indeed would be quite villainous. Yeah, I don't know. I think I said most of what I was going to say about Taylor during the chapter, but great work, Taylor. Great work being Taylor. You act like a real creep when you put the bugs on your face just to freak them out. You know, you don't gotta do stuff like that all the time. You could take it down like 1 notch. You're at like 11. Just maybe only go to 10. Anyway. Powers, knowledge, and world building. Nothing like new. Just the same kind of stuff from the last few chapters. We sort of see that the city's getting back together. They talk about that the Scar is like got various stuff. You know, the people left a lot of bouquets of flowers for Dauntless, etc. But not that much world building. Just like character building, surely, from all the like people telling each other stuff. But it's generally all stuff that we knew, aside from specifically Dauntless talking to Miss Militia and Flechette. That's like the newest information we get in this. And then yeah, I don't think I have much left. No bonus this week because barely got everything together. Audience participation. So the question was, who's your favorite fictional lesbian couple? And let's see what the people have said. What have they said? Lillian said Utena and Anthe, which Greg reacted to, put a rose. And I know enough about Utena to have seen all the roses in the little clips that happen. Utena was a magical girl anime about, revolutionary girl Utena. It's like iconic lesbian media as far as, I know. And is from the creator of Sailor Moon. We're all having a good time. And then we got a good answer from 2 + 4 × 5, who had said Homura Akemi and Madoka Kaname, and I gave that a pink heart and a purple heart to represent the 2 characters, purple for Homura and pink for Madoka. And then that got seconded by a speck of dust, so. And then I briefly talked about how I had just started showing Vic Madoka very recently. And then 2 plus 4 times 5 said, easily my #1 favorite anime of all time. And I'm like, hell yeah. And then things got slightly off topic of there. Vale said, Dame Aelin and Isabel from Baldur's Gate 3. I have to hope I pronounced that right, but I don't. I unfortunately don't know the characters beyond the very start of the game. I know like the one with the eternal engine heart. I don't even know her name. I just know that that's who I was romancing. I was a lizard woman, and I was like, lizards like hot things, so it's not even a problem. Oh, Vale says I got it just right. Nice. Vic said Harrow and Gideon from The Locked Tomb, which is the series that Gideon the Ninth is the first book of. And I myself was going to say my newly minted favorite fictional lesbian couple is also Harrow and Gideon. I almost said it the other way with Gideon first, but then I thought about it and I'm like, nah, it's Harrow and Gideon. Yes. And then Vic went on to say, though Rose and Kanaya are my OGs, from, again, Homestuck, the unapproachable series that we keep telling Vale not to read, but if Vale reads it, please tell us every moment and what you think about each thing. I think Rose and Kanaya are a great couple. I love that got said. It's a little predictable that it was from Vic or me saying it, but like I remember thinking that they were a great couple and like really compelling in the story. But then a bunch of people at the time, while it was still being written, were like, that's really weird that they're together now, when they were actually like officially together. And they were like, I never like picked up on that. It just seems out of nowhere. And it's like, what are you talking about? Did we read the same work of fiction? Oh, Greg says Uten is not the same author as Sailor Moon. See, I'm a charlatan. I didn't even do any research. I just thought that that was something I knew, but I was dead wrong. Let me see. What is the I see. Ikuhara was the director and was also the director of the TV adaptation of Sailor Moon at Toei in the 90s. So I was dead wrong, but not that dead wrong. Vale says, and how have you not finished if you started it? How is that humanly possible? Oh, Karlak is the character I was playing. Well, Vale, we just kind of like different things. I like Gideon the Ninth. I mean, I gotta reread that book so that I can read the next one. Because, like, my brain was overloaded by trying to keep track of that and think of a thing in a video game I was playing. It sounds very stupid, but I was trying to keep track of where randomized items were in my head, and it became very hard to focus on both perfectly at the same time. But yes, Gideon the Ninth is great. You should definitely read it. It's got one of those, like, you know how sometimes sci-fi openings are just a little impenetrable for like the first chapter? If you just push through the first chapter, like it already starts to get really funny by the end, and it's clear that there's like a lot of stuff that, like, the book's very irreverent, I would say, in a lot of ways. It does get serious, but I don't know, it knows when it's being like a funny book, and I think it lands really well. And Gideon, she's a real freak, and it's funny. She doesn't know how to interact with me. Vale says, I started it but haven't kept up. I have to assume that's about Gideon the Ninth. Alien says I have to finish Stormlight before I pick anything else up. That's so funny because Vic was asking me if I thought it would be worth us book clubbing Stormlight, which neither of us have read, but have both been suggested by like 10 people each. So we're debating it. And then Greg says, who wouldn't love a necromancer space lesbian murder mystery? That's true. That's a good point. It's kind of for everyone. It is not a niche audience. No, I'm lying. It's a pretty niche audience. But I think anyone who likes Worm would probably like Gideon the Ninth. I don't know. I think it's got not in a bad way, but they're both like very like YA, like older YA is how they both feel. Alien says, it's honestly crazy how similar some of Stormlight is to Worm, like almost identical in some ways. Vale says, my least favorite sort of necromancer, lesbian, murder, romance is when it's in space. There's so many like funny things they talk about early on. Like necromancers don't like space travel because in the void of space, they're not close enough to places where stuff has died. And so they have to like sit on a pile of bone meal and just be like really sickly the whole journey and like sort of vaguely feed off the little bit of death that they can put underneath them with the bones. It's just, oh my god, it's such a great setting. It's so fun. I mean, it's all very like, ugh, and grim and awful and whatever, but as a reader, it's fun. Anyway, I talking about Locked Tomb for so long that I didn't get to Greg's answer, which is Nozomi and Mizore from Liz and the Bluebird. Actually, I love most pairings from Kyo Annie series, but that one is particularly emotional. I love two couples from that setting that are not actual couples. I love the main girl from Sound Euphonium with either one of the really talented girl who doesn't get along with people at first, who she watches the fireworks with, and they lace their fingers together, and it's like the most lesbian coded thing you've ever seen in your life, and then they're like, no, they're both straight though, it's fine, neither of them are lesbians, they don't like girls, this is Japan, nobody likes girls in Japan. And it's like, what world are we living in? But then the other pairing is the main girl and the older girl with glasses, Asuka. I think they're a great pair. And I felt in the second season like they were being pushed together. What do we got? Alien has advised that I read the many times recommended by Greg, A Practical Guide to Evil. As I recall, isn't that one of the ones? That's one of the serials that you're always telling me to read? And it's also incredibly long. I feel certain. And then Greg says Kumiko and Reina. Sure. Yeah, they're the ones from Sound Euphonium. All right. Well, I've been all over the place with topics. We've done all sorts of things. I have the bones of a question for 21.6, but I wasn't sure how to phrase it. Alien says about. Well, Vale said, Greg and Vale said both like, yes, Practical Guide to Evil is excellent, and then Alien said, I think he's writing one right now too called Pale Lights. Yes, I'm behind on Pale Lights, says Greg, but I've enjoyed what I've read so far. But yes, I was going to say, my question. I'm trying to like form it into its final format, but it was something like the death of the newest ambassador, or like one of the new ambassadors dies in the next chapter in a fight, and it seems like really casually treated in a way. Like they don't seem as freaked out as I would. I mean, they've been through a lot of stuff, but it's still like I don't know. It's like if Sundancer had gotten fragged or something in arc uh 15 or whatever. It's just really kind of like it's sudden and they don't react as much as I would have expected. It's kind of strange. Um so let me think. How would I word this? What do you think of the casual way the Undersiders and Ambassadors treat the death of one of the new members of the Ambassadors? Question mark. Cool. Let's grab all that. Copy. Enter. And there you go. Normally it takes way longer to write a question, but I already had the idea for it this time. It's just really hard to think of one that doesn't suck, because they usually kind of suck. Anyway, I'm going to start up the old outro music, which is the same as the old intro music. As we have been listening to for the past several times, the music used in this episode is Imago by ScarlettXOX. Our friend, who has a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. I think she's kind of inactive-ish at the time, but sometimes she'll just randomly do a stream. So, our Discord server link can be found in the stream description, as well as the channel description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. And there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Vale says, good night, take care. Thank you, Vale. Wow, for a very brief period, for like 1 minute, we had 4 people earlier. That's crazy. Maybe somebody just stumbled in. And then, stumbled promptly back out. Greg says, cheers. Alien says, you guys have a good... I'll just take it as a good week. You guys have a good... Oh, you know what? I'll have this... start partway into this and have it play out for the rest of the thing. Yeah, well, I'm just gonna turn off my mic and let the music resolve itself.